And given what we have seen now, right, since PM Wong has taken over, so do you think civil society has changed, will change? Does the relationship between civil society and the state
You
with
mean
PM?
because of
Yes,
4G or because of
because of 4G. Yeah.
uh oh gosh. So 4G has or maybe I should say Lawrence Wong, the new prime minister, has a particular
Right,
rhetoric, right,
right,
and a particular style, and I think everybody in 4G has a different role to play.
right,
His, I suppose, is the let's be inclusive, let's have you know
right,
more diversity, let's be gentle, let's be kind, let's be understanding. There's still core concerns that we have to look after, so the continuity thing has to still
right,
be born. But his job, I suppose, is the good cop kind of thing, right? So he's doing that. So if one approach, and it's approach that civil society has taken since early 90s and all of that, right? 80s, which is um, to be deliberately naive, right? So if politicians say this, as much as you know a lot of it is rhetoric,
right,
right, and you know a lot of it is just like division of labor in
right,
terms of love and coercion, that kind of formula for control, right? So he's doing the love thing, right?
right,
So
right,
then there are civil society people who say, okay, we hold him to his words, right? Let's be deliberately naive. Let's be optimistic. If he says there is space for this, let's go and fill up that space, right? Let's fill it with things that we care about, and let's see how they stack up, right? And if he didn't mean it, or there are contradictions, then those contradictions will show up. You cannot then say that I invited you in, but you didn't come,
right.
right? So I think that's one sort of approach, but I also understand how it can be infuriating and exhausting for civil society to be led like this all the time, right? Where there's this big talk about we're more progressive now, we understand the concerns, we've got your back, and all this kind of language being spoken through one side of the mouth. Another side of the mouth says, we wish you would step up and take action about the things that you care about, and so on and so forth. And then through another part of the mouth, you're scolded, reprimanded, punished, and so on and so forth for standing up for things that you may care deeply about,
Yeah.
but which is thoroughly inconvenient to the state. So these three sort of things, that you're apathetic, but hey, if you care about it, we're here for you. But don't go there, don't do that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because that's not the right thing to do. This
Right.
thing is exhausting, right? It's exhausting. So uh, what do we see in civil society? I mean, we see a blossoming of many, I think, relatively new concerns, right? I mean, we've seen, in the 90s, 2000s, it was a lot about the environment, but more in terms of conservation and that sort of thing, right? But now we're looking at climate concerns, and not just climate crisis. We're looking at to me, an even more sophisticated set of concerns about climate justice, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing that the climate agenda will impose a differential set of costs on
Yeah, yeah.
different parts of society, and how can we square what we all want, which is to save the planet, with the needs and concerns of So I see sophistication
Right.
in the kind of civil society that's really spearheaded by a younger a generation of Singaporeans who seem maybe not so burdened by the heaviness of the past, right? 1987, for
Yeah.
example, is not remembered by many young activists today,
The
right? So
Marxist
they can proceed.
conspiracy.
Yeah, the Marxist conspiracy. All these
Yeah.
kinds of things that cast a very long and dark shadow on civil society for a very long time, right? So, um, you've got this kind of lightness of a generation that doesn't have that baggage. They are driven by concerns that are very authentic to them. I think, climate, for example, is obviously much more authentic for them than it might be for my generation, right? Or yours. Mental health is very real for
Yeah.
them. Palestine is very
Yeah.
real for them. I mean, the geography means nothing, right? In this
Yeah.
case, and there's something very different that they're being energized, and again, it's not because they need something to get into Harvard, right? They need
Yeah.
to pad their CVs to show that they did things. It's not even that kind of cynical view. There's something very real. There's something very uh, and also, I mean, like it encourages me also that it feels like it feels like the goals, the intermediate goals, right, are also not the same. They don't need to form up into organizations with constitutions and to register and to do
Yeah.
all these things. They seem to be a lot more sophisticated in the looseness with which they
Right.
organize. So very networky, very
Right.
open, and very attentive also to
Yeah.
wellness, right? So it seems to me they're very aware of like burnout, things like
Yeah.
burnout, right? So they look after each other, and that's like a beautiful
Yeah.
vision of civil society
Absolutely.
to me, right? That
Yeah.
escapes, all the horrific bureaucratic and
Right. And there's
authoritarian, yeah.
the the beauty of that is also there's no leader or leaders, right? Like
Mm,
every other person is an activist. So in a
yeah,
sense, it's harder to clamp down on
it
something,
is.
you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I like to
So
think of it
and
as civil society in the 90s was very solid,
yeah,
right? It had a very solid
yeah,
quality, and then it starts to liquefy a
yeah.
little, so it's more like what, and now it's almost
Right,
gaseous, right? It's kind of
right, right,
and it will if there's an issue, it will sort of condense around that issue,
right.
right? And once that
Yeah,
issue
yeah,
is done, it just dissipates again, and
yeah.
that's a beautiful thing.
In fact, even what I think, yeah, since you said community, that's the word. In fact, even the relationship between those the new civil society actors and the established civil society
Hmm.
organizations. For instance, I've seen so many times. I've even asked myself, how come these organizations are not talking about Palestine, right? When you expect them to, so
Ah,
even within this, there's a certain amount of
right.
expectation that especially even civil society organizations have been around
Yeah,
2 decades, three
yeah,
decades. You also have been socialized into a particular way of,
yeah.
whereas the new ones, as you said, they are unburdened by all of
Yeah.
this, right? Yeah.
I mean, I want to
Uh,
call it courageous, but I think it's beyond
yeah.
courageous, right? There's a kind of lightness
Yeah.
that where these questions don't matter as much. If you're institutionalized, then sure you have to worry. Who are your stakeholders?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
will you antagonize? Who will you, kind of, what are the costs
Right.
of taking a stand
Right.
in certain ways, right? And then no, but what's also interesting, we like to focus on the young,
Yeah.
right? But I've also noticed that there is also a generation of more senior Singaporeans who are who are also rather vocal at this time,
Yeah.
and their message is we've become a very staid and formulaic place, right? Lacking in courage, lacking in imagination, and
Yeah.
so on and so forth. So there is also a generation of older Singaporeans who become very disappointed with the technocracy that we find
Right.
ourselves in today, and they are kind of pressing for more, kind of a more adventurous mind, a
Yeah.
bigger sense of what Singapore can be, and all of that.